Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show and keeps us going. I learned last night that Donald Trump is an expert on genetics, on genes. That's right. And I have to tell you, I was so horrified by what I heard, but this is not new, of course. We know that Donald Trump has said in the past comments about the inferior status of people from Africa and from Central and South America. We know these stories. But let me talk about genes for a moment. I first became aware of genetics when I was watching a movie, Judgment at Nuremberg. It was my 13th birthday, and I said to my parents I would like to see this movie. It was playing at the Old Coronet Theater in San Francisco. And there is a scene in the movie about something called the Feldenstein case, a completely imaginary case. But it had to do with the fact that Jews had inferior genes. And interestingly enough, the case law cited was Oliver Wendell Holmes, who at one point agreed on the idea of genetic superiority. Oliver Wendell Holmes, for heaven's sake. Well, I remember leaving the movie a bit shaken. My father was a doctor, and I asked him what he thought. And he said, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely silly. He said, and my father was from Germany, and was a professor at Halle-Wittenberg University, and did leave because he was expelled from his position and because he was a Jew. And my father said to me, genetic superiority and inferiority, John, is disastrous. He said, look what Hitler did in creating the illusion that Jews were inferior, that there was a master race, the Aryan race. Oh, wait! Did you hear Donald Trump speak about Northern Europeans as being genetically superior? The same rubbish advocated by Hitler. Now, what bothered me, and I really got into this, was learning about Professor Shockley, who was at Stanford University, who taught that African Americans were inferior. Or C.P. Snow, who advocated that Jews had superior genes. The idea that genetics plays a role in this campaign is, to me, abhorrent. By the way, did Donald Trump get a degree in genetics? Now, I took genetics in college from Dr. Lois James. She was my teacher. I was not very good in science, but what I learned from Dr. James was that these genetic theories of superiority and inferiority have been used for dreadful, horrific things. So when I hear Donald Trump speaking about genes and the idea that those coming into this country illegally, only illegally, do they seem to suffer from gene deficiency, I think to myself, how can the American people, how can his supporters take Donald Trump seriously? You know, it's a curious thing. The other article that I read this morning had to do with the fact that many of the anti-vax people support Donald Trump. And of course, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who was notorious for his anti-vaccination diatribes, well, he's supporting Donald Trump. And Donald Trump embraces that wacko theory that genetics, that having a vaccine all mixed together create a terrible potion. Let me tell you something. Thank God for vaccinations, whether it's the 3 R's with children, whether it is the flu shot that I just received, or the vaccination against COVID, which certainly saved countless lives. And do you remember Donald Trump talking about using bleach to solve the problem of COVID? Do you remember that? I must reinforce this idea that this campaign is a little bit wacko. That's right. The stuff coming out of Donald Trump's mouth, absolutely unbelievable. But what is more unbelievable is that there is not a direct, immediate response from Republicans, from physicians, from people who understand that the minute you talk about genetic superiority and inferiority, the minute you attack a person because of their genes, all of a sudden, my friends, all of a sudden, you have a problem. And by the way, if you're Irish or Italian or a Jew, remember this kind of genetic nonsense was used at the height of immigration to America, when we were told the Irish or the Italians or the Jews were inferior. I know that was in the 19th and early 20th century, but nonetheless, it is that kind of claptrap which Donald Trump is now spewing. I chose this morning to talk about this issue because I was so offended by it. And I think we all should be. You know, my father of blessed memory used to say, it's all a matter of emphasis. What do you choose to emphasize? And what Donald Trump is emphasizing now is horrific. Let us hope, and I say this with all sincerity, that the American people will rise up and just say no. Because, frankly, I don't want to live in a world where I have a leader who believes in genetic superiority and inferiority, particularly when he's not a scientist, has no background in this area, and who is spreading malicious, false rumors. Oh, and by the way, Haitians don't eat cats and dogs. Just thought I'd throw that in. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am John Rothman. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand. I want to thank all of you for spreading the word about this podcast. So many of you have contacted me, and you can through LinkedIn and through Facebook, to tell me how much you appreciate the fact that every day we get together just to talk about these issues. I also want to remark that this is the second anniversary of the destruction of KGO Radio. How much I miss being able to be on the radio with you in a talk show, being able to talk about these weighty issues. Well, we do the best we can, and that's why we have this podcast. So make sure to follow along. Make sure to interact with me. And by all means, a big thank you to Gogo Zoger, who produces this podcast. All right, that's it for today. I am John Rothman. I'll be back tomorrow, right here, for another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then.